Let's begin with a little meditation for our practice day. Sit comfortably. Make your mind and body comfortable, relaxed. Place your attention on your respiration to begin with. Then withdraw your attention further inside to your mental consciousness. A subtler object. Withdrawn away from the senses as much as possible. And with component of wisdom, mental factor of wisdom, try to perceive the clear light nature of your mind. Mind does not obstruct the occurrence of thoughts, nor does it nor is it obstructed by the presence of thoughts. The actual occurrence of images, ideas, thoughts to your mind, instead of thinking of them as obstacles, they can reinforce that understanding because the mind allows their presence. Let go again and again of, say, your attention to outside objects. In other words, draw your attention away from the sense consciousnesses. And don't be drawn to external objects via thinking about them. Various qualities of our world. I think this is what might be called the conventional Buddha nature. All living beings share in the same nature of the mind, conventional nature of the mind. And like us, exactly equal to us, they want to be happy, want to be free of suffering. They have the capacity for both of those. They have the right. Right now, due to ego grasping, we conceive ourselves sometimes intellectually, conceptually, through a sense of who we are. I am a man, I'm a woman, I am this person, that person. And innately we grasp at ourselves as somehow findable. These two conceptions, grasping to a self identity that doesn't really exist, the way that our mind conceives, prevents us from understanding our fluidity in numberless lifetimes in the past. We've been every position in cyclic existence, every station, high to low. We've been blissfully happy for lives. We've been abysmally unhappy, suffering, tortured. There's nothing that we have not experienced. No gender, no appearance, no rebirth state. So all other sentient beings, although they're appearing now in different states of happiness or suffering, or attractive or unattractive, virtuous or non-virtuous, all of them have gone through and are going through the same cyclic existence. Developing a wish for ourself to be free of this constant poisonous mind of self-grasping that's the cause of all of our dissatisfaction, cause of our creating negative karma, the cause of our creating contaminated virtue, not perceiving ultimate reality. The itch that always wants to be scratched, not allowing us to cure it. All sentient beings are experiencing the same dilemma. Out of a fear or concern that we would not be able on our own to escape from cyclic existence, without guidance, without refuge, and out of a fear or concern that we would not be able to help all of these living beings eliminate their suffering, find everlasting happiness without guidance and refuge. And turning the mind to the possibilities, our own intelligence, books in the West about science, or teachers that teach worldly paths, none of them can really protect us. They might tell us how to better invest our money, find physical happiness this lifetime, find physical health. All of that has to be left behind. The only real refuge to escape from cyclic existence, to help us attain, lead us to Buddhahood, to help others escape from cyclic existence, the only real refuge is the Buddha himself, who taught the Dharma out of his own experience. And the Arya beings, the Sangha, who've put it into practice to the extent of realizing emptiness. Knowing that their Dharma, that the Buddha taught, Sangha practices, involves both conventional and ultimate manifestations. That to get to the realization of emptiness, we need to control our mind, understand it. So for that purpose, in order to get closer to Buddhahood, for the sake of all of these mother sentient beings who, like us, are cycling in samsara, I'm going to participate in the practice day today to better understand my mind, to overcome my negative states, develop the virtuous ones, to put myself in a position to ultimately develop the two bodhicittas for the sake of all sentient beings. And then bring your attention back to the present. Could someone take down that clock? I seem to remember that we took it down once before. It seems that some Mara has the idea that in the meditation hall there should be a clock that's. Did you hear that's almost the only? Maybe put a cushion over put a cushion over it or something. Yeah, it's the same. There you go. So, yes, I thought for a while it was a tape recorder, but then sometimes it's interesting when if you get distracted to that, the mind moves out a bit and it seems very loud. When you bring your attention back to the object of concentration, you can ignore that. That's the point. But at the beginning, as Rinpoche mentioned in the teachings on calm abiding, it's important to not have distractions. Otherwise, it's very hard to learn how to bring your mind inward. Okay. So, any questions about our material this year before we begin? We've talked about the 51 mental factors. And today we're going to meditate on the antidotes. Do we need the heater on? Maybe we don't need the heater on. I think it's getting warmer, isn't it?
Do you want to?
I think, yeah, let's leave it off. How are you feeling? It's going to be getting warmer as the sun's out. It's not getting colder. Oops. Okay. I forgot my glasses as usual. Okay. So we got up to the point of the 20 secondary afflictions, and I just mentioned a little bit about them, and we'll do some meditation. It's not so apparent in the text by Yeshe Gelsen how the secondary afflictions are connected with the root afflictions, but in the book by Geshe Rapton, drawing from some other sources, he actually divides them up into how they're related with the other afflictions. So the first, we could say that all of the mental states, all the afflictions are related with the root delusions, with the root afflictions, right? Some of them are predominantly associated with anger, some with attachment, some with bewilderment. Some are related in a sense with combinations, both states, both negative states, say, of bewilderment and, say, anger, or bewilderment and attachment have to be present. So we'll see those in a second. Let's just go through the list. Some of you have this book. Not all of you have it, I guess. So on page 151, the afflictions that are derived from anger. So if you wanted to make note in your other text where there's a list of the mental factors, the one that we call belligerence, that is called belligerence in this text, in Geshe-la's book, is called wrath. What does wrath mean to you? Sometimes we think of that as, we understand in Buddhism as there being something called wrath that is positive, right? Like the wrathful protectors. So I'm not sure wrath is particularly, because wrath can be also virtuous, can be without anger. Maybe wrath is not the best translation. Maybe belligerence is pretty good. I'm not sure. So this is associated with anger. It's like in an intense state of anger in which the anger is increased and wishes to cause immediate harm. It's sort of like, what would you say in that case? Losing your temper, maybe. Would you say that? No? When you lose your temper, what happens? What do we usually mean by that?
Not
Yeah, not in control. Losing your temper, not in control. So here, there are two kinds of not in control. One is, in general, this one, wrath or belligerence, when you lose your temper, I don't know if you necessarily rage, I said, you just lose your temper and you lose control. So you're ready to act out something immediately. So this would be this mental factor. The second one that's related with anger is the next one on the list, what is called here resentment. Here in Geshe Rapton's text called vengeance, which I almost think you could call grudge, although grudge doesn't sound strong enough. Vengeance, what's the word that they always talk about? What's the phrase they always say in literature and movies? That something is best served cold? Oh, revenge. So revenge, you might call. Have you ever heard that expression?
Yeah, because Klingon quote.
Oh, the Klingons say revenge is a dish best served cold. So, in other words, it's better if you're going to get revenge. Do you get the idea, Miriam? What that means? It means if you're going to get revenge on someone, you've got a grudge. You want to hurt them, but you keep silent about it for a long time until they're unaware. A long time later, then their defenses will be down. That's one aspect of it. Maybe the Klingons have some other interpretation. I don't know. So what we might call grudge or revenge or vengeance or resentment, it's something that's, here in Geshe-la's text, this is a knot in the mind. It means it's like you're holding something tightly in the mind and not letting it go. It's kind of like we say, I hold a grudge, right? Without forgetting, firmly holds on to the fact that in the past one was harmed by a particular person, for instance, and it intends to find an opportunity whereby to return the harm. So that's very much, you could use any of those words. In some cases it might be vengeance. We want to avenge our ancestors. Different civilizations on Earth hold grudges from generation to generation. Our ancestors were slaughtered by your people, 500 years ago, so we're going to harm you now. Okay, so that's also derives out of anger. Okay, so it's a particular kind of state. The first one, belligerence or wrath, was something that was ready to act out, sort of like having lost your temper. This is more like not having lost your temper, in a sense, what we usually mean, like losing control, but holding something, holding it in, but ready to use it, not letting go, not forgiving, not forgetting. Third one, connected with anger, we skip over concealment, because that's not connected with anger, to spite. Most of the texts translated this one as spite. What do you mean by spite in the... Mo, do you use that word ever? Do we say act out of spite or speak out of spite?
Well, to me it means out of a real malice.
A spiteful man.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
Get back at somebody.
Yeah.
So here, maybe in the dictionaries, in the Western dictionaries, you have to check, but they all use it for this one because this is a mental factor that when preceded by wrath or belligerence, that's the first of the secondary mental factors, or vengeance, that is revenge or grudge, and as an outcome of malicious mind, motivates one to utter harsh speech in reply to unpleasant words said by others. So spite, sometimes we say they speak spitefully. So this one is not talking about the meaning of spite in general, like if we think of a spiteful person as being someone who's just has, malicious, but someone who is spiteful, meaning unable to control one's harsh speech in response to some harm that one has received or unpleasant speech that one has heard. Okay, so these three, that's pretty clear, those all arise out of anger. Then if we go down further down the list, the next one, jealousy, which in Geshe-Repton's text is called envy, is also said to derive out of anger. So it's a little bit interesting. Almost seems like it's connected with attachment also. But while it's present, while the jealous mind is present, the main kind of factor that's present while jealousy or envy is in the mind will be its connection with anger. It's motivated out of attachment to some kind of pleasure. You want something, and you're attached to that, either your friends or qualities or wealth. And when others find, or reputation, let's say, when others find what you've been seeking, you find it very unbearable because you can't get that. Does that sound familiar? We all have that. So that also is not placed with attachment. It's placed in the category of afflictions that are derived from anger. Then of the rest of the 20, yeah.
Back later again and talk about these, or
No, we can talk now, yeah.
or not? Because you had mentioned to think about the difference between jealousy and envy.
Yeah, what did you come up with?
I never really. I just remembered now, actually.
Okay. So what do you think?
Anyone else thought?
Jealousy and envy. Anyone have any ideas? Envy. We're envious. Actually, does it always sound, when we use the word envy in the West, do we always think of it as something really negative? We can even praise someone and say, I'm really envious of you. You know, I'd like to have your qualities. But it doesn't always connote the flavor of this state that is, consumed by some unhappiness. Unless you say the person is consumed by envy. We sometimes use a phrase like that. Something like
Positive envy, even like, yeah, it doesn't seem so like there's not so much anger there. There doesn't seem to be.
Well, yeah. See, the main thing here is always to go back and remember, as we've learned in many different contexts, names are completely arbitrary. So what we have to understand is the distinguishing characteristic of this state. When we talk about words, it's always to try to find a word that can connote that well in your own mind, maybe to be able to share it with others without a lot of confusion. It's not as though there is something called, that there is a real entity, envy, that we're trying to figure out what it is. That we know that there is something, out there called envy and we're trying to investigate it. It's that we've pointed out a particular state of mind that has certain attributes. Now we're trying to see if the word envy, the way that we usually think of the word envy, is well descriptive of that state, right? So this is a distinct mental factor that out of attachment to respect and material gain, I think it includes, my understanding also includes other things. Let's see here. It's in the thing derived from anger or hatred, right? Okay. But it's derived from, first of all, let's see, jealousy. So this one calls jealousy. What is jealousy? It is a deep disturbance of mind that cannot tolerate another's marvelous attributes. So to tolerate or mean be patient, it says it cannot tolerate. So that's why it's associated with, that's why it's derived from anger. And it is due to excessive attachment to gain and honor and involved with hatred. It has the function of causing mental unhappiness and of of not abiding in contact with happiness. So it's a deep disturbance of the mind that cannot bear another's success due to attachment to gain and honor. It seems the way that it's phrased here, it almost seems limited. Almost seems like, say, for instance, how would you say if you're jealous of your companions, someone that you have some kind of relationship with, if they, or you fancy you have a relationship with, and they start to spend time with someone else, don't we usually associate a state of mind in response to that called jealousy? But would that fit this definition? Because it says it's due to attachment to gain and honor, the way it's translated in the other text. Unable to bear good things, what does it say? Due to attachment to respect and material gain. Same, just different translation of the same things. Respect and material gain. So if other people have a reputation, start to get reputation that you may be envious of, that can be a direct cause according to this definition. Or if others have material gain, so maybe you can say that another person's affection, that the other person that you're jealous of, some suitor, if they're getting the affection that you think should be coming to you, maybe that might be called material gain. But here it seems to be a little bit limited. I'm not sure why. Okay, so that's also connected with anger, okay? And the last of these 20 that is actually directly connected, directly arisen from hatred alone is cruelty. What is it called in our list here? Harmfulness. Number 10. So this is, remember we had ahimsa earlier in the virtuous mental factors, non-harmfulness or non-cruelty. Here, this is the opposite. This is a mental factor that with a malicious intention, devoid of any compassion or kindness, desires to belittle and disregard others. It has the function of harming the good qualities of oneself and others, obviously, acting as a basis for turmoil and physically harming the lives of others. So generally, cruelty or harmfulness generally is aimed toward those who you are superior to in some way. Either you have power over them or you consider them inferior to yourself. It's kind of hard to be cruel or harmful to those who are more powerful or higher than oneself, although you can have grudge toward them, isn't it? If someone is temporarily in a position where you can't be cruel, maybe you hold the grudge, you have the sense of revenge. So these 5, let's spend a little time thinking about this for a second and then to meditate on these. So these are all derived from the root poison of hatred. Here in Geshe Repton's text it says anger, but generally when you talk about the 3 poisonous minds, you don't say anger, but if you were to say that they were derived out of the root affliction, you would say anger. When you say the poisonous minds, you say hatred, attachment, and bewilderment. In the root afflictions, we talk about anger instead of hatred, attachment still, and ignorance instead of bewilderment. Bewilderment can be something even a little more general than ignorance, kind of even a fogginess of mind. Okay, so keep these in mind. Wrath or belligerence is a extension of anger, increase, wishing to cause immediate harm. It has the function of directly connecting the person who intends to cause the harm with the actual means to do so. So you pick up something, you throw it against the wall, or like the people who shoot their computers, out of frustration, or throw them out the window or something like that. So I think of that as kind of losing your temper. Okay, that's just my own association with that. Vengeance is kind of another response to anger in the mind. You hold a grudge, so you keep it kind of quiet. You hold, but you don't let go. It's not as though you were just harmed and you can't do anything about it, so you let it go. You're keeping it in mind, like tying a knot, like you tie a knot, or you tie a string around your finger so you don't forget something. Do you ever do that? Or you write? Who write? I think some of you write. Nowadays, people write in ballpoint pen notes on their arms. Sometimes they have all sorts of notes. Let's see, what was I supposed to? 10 o'clock. So it's a little bit like that. And wishing, intending in the future to do harm. Spite is motivating unpleasant words, motivates ones to utter harsh speech in reply to unpleasant words. Envy or jealousy is that unable to bear, so that's the sense of its relationship with the entity of anger, unable to bear the happiness of others. Someone else is getting something that you want, either it be reputation or good, material, or I think it can also include to other kinds of qualities such as affection or things that we, like that. And then cruelty or harmfulness, which is kind of the state of mind I've mentioned before that kind of imputes upon others the sense that they're suitable to be harmed. It's okay to harm them. Cruelty is a mental factor that with a malicious intention, devoid of any compassion or kindness, desires to belittle and disregard others. So it doesn't have to, cruelty doesn't have to actually act out some, violent action. It can be just kind of condescending, can't it? Would you say condescend? You know what condescension means? Would you say condescension would kind of, in some cases, fall under this? What do you think, Mark? To be condescending?
Spite, wasn't spite the verbal?
Right. So some condescending you can, but you can kind of presume and act. Here, harmfulness. We'll read the definition in Yeshe Gelson's text. What is it? It's involved with anger. It is a non-benevolence, non-compassion, and non-mercy. It has the function of harming others or being cruel to others. So again, the words are only translations. We have to try to get at what the meaning is, whether our idea of cruelty or our harming is actually what's meant. As has been said, it is a wish bereft of benevolence, lacking benevolence. It's a wish to harm sentient beings. So it's a harmful mind. Condescension could be. Condescension could be just out of pride, couldn't it? Might just be just a state of pride, and not even knowing, not even wishing that you're harming others. But this is definitely if it were a condescension, it would be one in which you're trying to put the other person down. Since, what does it say here? Since here are the synonyms, non-benevolent and so forth, in the definition, are explained in the commentaries as follows. It is a wish to, since it is a wish to harm by oneself, it is non-benevolence. Since it's a wish to engage others in harming, it is non-compassion. Since it is rejoicing upon seeing or hearing others acting to harm, it is non-mercy. It is simply to understand that it is simply to be understood that its function is as above. Okay, so all of these 5 derive from anger. Anger, if we remember, the mental factor that if we think about it in a general sense, it's perceived some phenomenon, We perceive something which we find unattractive for some reason, perhaps because it is directly causes some suffering to us or causes our mind to be unhappy. Okay? We can get angry about things that aren't causing us actual physical suffering, right? You know, probably much of our anger derives that way. Someone says something about you. To some people, it just what do they say, like water off a duck's back? Different words will not affect them at all. Other people, when they hear those words, unhappiness arises in the mind. So the root cause of anger, the root affliction, is experiencing something which we find unattractive and causes, and by inattentively attending to that, we become unhappy. We then exaggerate the qualities of that. That's the projective quality of anger, the conceptual quality, so that it intensifies in our mind to the extent that we find it unbearable and we might want to strike out, or, you know, it can lead to these other secondary factors, but that's the main quality of anger. We'd read the definition in our other text before of anger. Here in Geshe Repton's text, when it talks about anger, it's a distinct mental factor that in reference to one of the three objects. Remember what the three objects were? Everyone's very quiet this morning. Maybe we didn't have your coffee yet. Yeah? Was it? I don't think so. What were the three objects, remember? Suffering itself, sentient causes of suffering, and other beings. Do you remember? Okay. Anger is a distinct mental factor that in reference to one of the three objects agitates the mind through being unable to bear. So it has a state of being impatient, not able to bear something. What do you think? Are we able to bear suffering? Are you able to bear suffering? If you're not able to bear suffering, that itself indicates that there is some semblance of anger in the mind. We might not think of that as anger. Yeah? Right? Or say a bee stings you. You have no choice at that moment. I mean, you're feeling this pain. If you allow your mind, out of not being able to bear that, if your mind becomes agitated, that's the distinctive quality of a delusion, right? Of an affliction, that it disturbs the mind. So finding something difficult to bear may not be enough to qualify as anger. It's when that state, the difficulty in bearing it, causes the mind to be disturbed, that it becomes anger. It has the function of disturbing and roughening the mind. It acts as a basis for tormenting both oneself and others, and is a contributory condition for the increase of suffering and its causes. So one of the three objects, the being or objects by whom we are being harmed, the suffering that occurs through our being harmed, or the reasons or causes by which we're being harmed. So those are as we said, those are the three objects. So basically, this is one of our great demons, anger, and the belligerence, let's say harmfulness, the vengeance or grudge, the spite that we may generate from it, the envy that allowing that state of unbearability in our mind to be there, allows it to be there, and the cruelty or the harmfulness. All of these arise from that state of mind. How does cruelty arise from anger then, if anger is like unable to bear some suffering and agitating the mind? With a malicious intention, devoid of any compassion or kindness, desires to belittle and disregard others. So devoid of compassion and kindness. So it is this is a mental state that is derived from anger. So it's unable to bear something, perhaps other people's ignorance. Do you know the expression, what does it say? Not able to bear fools? What do they say? How do they say that? Can't suffer fools gladly. I don't suffer fools gladly, or something like that. What does that mean? To suffer fools. Put up with. You can't suffer them means you can't bear with the foolishness of others, and that might be one of a person who has that kind of state of mind at any particular time, because we all have at various times. That might be a manifestation of this mental factor, cruelty, that wants to belittle and disregard others. Okay, so let's do a little meditation. Let's sit first of all quietly and meditate on the antidotes of anger. Try to recognize it in our own mind. So first quiet the mind. Focus on your breathing for a few respirations. Then bring your attention to your consciousness as a subtler object. And try to imagine in the controlled setting of our meditative session some anger-provoking situation. Maybe we've been harmed, we've been abused, someone has hurt us in some way, we feel others disregard us or whatever. We find that unable to be born without agitating the mind. We can't just accept its presence and the mind remain calm. As it evolves, we begin to conceptualize. We start to think of reasons. They did it because they don't respect me, they don't like me. They did it for their own interests, they're disregarding me, or they're disregarding others, they're harming society. Here, as we have motivated this kind of investigation, conceptualizing what the cause of our unhappiness is, we've been motivated by this disturbance, not being able to bear the suffering. This is called inattentive attention, inappropriate attention, attending to the object inappropriately. And in so doing, we begin to exacerbate, make the mind more agitated, till anger actually takes root in our mind. We're angry about something. It's going to be associated often with something unhappy. It arises out of an unhappy mind. And like all living beings, we want to be free of unhappiness and out of unskill, rather than being able to bear with that unhappiness for a short time. We want to do something either keep a grudge or act out. Plan to hurt the other person or ignore them or whatever in the future. Seeing this is identifying the state in our own mind. See if you can identify that angry state and even allow it, if you still have moments of it, allow it to be present in this controlled setting of your meditative session. Now think of the disadvantages of this state. The obvious disadvantages to the world: we become unlovable to others when we're angry. We're unattractive. Our face turns red. We say violent things. We're unpleasant to be with. Our reputation is destroyed. From our own side, our mind becomes more agitated, uncomfortable for a long period of time. Not easy to relax. We need to immediately have someone massage our shoulder blades, give us a neck rub. We're all tense. Our stomach gets in knots. Stomach acid begins to pump. We become kind of a type A personality over a long period of time if we're totally accept anger. Raises our blood pressure. But the subtle, the most destructive faults are the danger, that damage that anger does on the level of our future continuity. We create negative karma by allowing our mind to be disturbed when we're unhappy, by wishing to harm. Anger creates negative karma in such a way that it will be reflected upon us in the future. We will be harmed by others. Even just the mental action of anger, even not acting it out, holding a grudge or holding that anger, very strong anger, not only creates negative karma for ourselves to be harmed in the future, but also destroys, weakens, postpones our roots of virtue that otherwise might bring some relief within cyclic existence, roots of virtue that might support our realizations along the path, so that through the fire of anger, those realizations are put off, postponed, or perhaps the causes for them eradicated for the time being. So seeing these disadvantages, wanting to apply the antidote of patience, thinking, I should be patient, and understanding here that would mean a state of mind which is able to bear that which is uncomfortable. Not retaliating towards sentient beings when we're harmed. Bearing discomfort for the sake of practicing the Dharma, having faith in that. How can we develop this kind of patience? What antidotes can we use to overcome the anger? Think of the methods that Atisha brought to Tibet from enshrined in the Kadampa tradition. Thinking of, first of all, the arrow and the target. Rather than thinking this harm has just arisen mainly from some outer situation, unrelated to oneself, one doesn't deserve this. Think, I have created the cause for this in the past. It's as though I've shot the arrow in the past. If I had not shot the arrow, even the present condition arose, I would not experience this harm, this unhappiness. Like the present target being there, if there was no arrow shot in the past, there'd be nothing to hit the target. This is a manifestation, a ripening of my negative action. There's no way I could be experiencing this discomfort, unhappiness, lack of love, lack of attention, disrespect, having my things stolen, held in contempt by others, or actually harmed, tortured. No way that I could be hit by the car or imprisoned unless I'd created the cause in the past. And go back to the situation that you'd used as an example in your laboratory experiment of anger. Something causes the mind to be unhappy, the mind becomes agitated, unable to bear that. Now look at it from the point of view of karma. Instead of now inattentively, I'm using the wrong word each time, inappropriately attending to the action, thinking that in this sense that it has arisen without any cause, any personal responsibility. Think, this is the result of my negative karma in the past. Completely different way of looking at it rather than attending to it as paying attention to it as though it were unjustified. No relationship to oneself. One was blameless. Here, no way that one can experience this discomfort unless one has created the cause in the past. So how much more skillful it would be to bear this now, recognizing it as eliminating this negative fruit, the fruit of our negative action of the past, exhausting our negative karma, and resolving thereby to create the causes in the future for happiness, not to create the causes for this kind of misfortune. If we are dictated to, we have dictated to others in the past. If we're not loved, we've been unloving to others in the past. If we have things stolen, we've stolen from others, etc. This one reason alone might be a very potent antidote for certain actions, certain karmas, whereas it might not be applicable to everything. Might make a very deep impact on other kinds of anger. Now, think of another antidote, the one that overcomes the projection that this is unbearable because it's going to constantly be there. So the antidote is understanding impermanence. This will change. Every moment the situation is changing. As my wisdom perceives it differently, I may be able to accept even the continuity of this suffering, but even the suffering itself will end as the karma ripens. It's not eternal. Go back to the anger-provoking experiment, the situation that causes anger in the mind, and see if understanding the situation as impermanent, that this too will pass. Helps to overcome that agitation of the mind. Being able to bear with it because it has a limited duration. It's changing every moment. And in a few moments, it may be different if our mind is not holding on to it as being the same. This leaves open the possibility of again experiencing someone that's causing us harm as a friend in the future. Otherwise we can easily hold a grudge, thinking they are always going to be my enemy, and I'm going to get back at them. Think how the tragedies of our youth, in retrospect, when we look back at them over time, well, they seem so trivial. Only because we were attending to them at that point as so monumental, one aspect of which might have been the sense of their permanence. Now see how this antidote affects the intensity of the anger. So now relax your mind, bring your attention back for the present. We'll take a little break, and then we'll meditate some more on this and apply some other antidote. Okay, so Maureen was asking a question in the break, I thought it was worth sort of investigating a little bit about how do these meditative episodes, when we try to meditate on the antidotes to the delusion, do we have to do them again and again and again, or are they cumulative, or should we expect a breakthrough right away? Of course, I mentioned that you have to have some supporting factors. You have to have an accumulation of merit and a period of purification, constant purification in your life of negative karmic seeds that are obscuring you, preventing you from making the realizations, and the accumulation of merit that acts as a support to make the realizations. Then there is some chance that the meditation can become more successful. The third factor that Manjushri told Lama Tsongkhapa that's necessary to make realization is to pray to the Guru as oneness with the deity. That is, to see the teachings one is receiving. Even if you think of your Guru, say you're just completely off in some isolated place and you don't have contact with ever had any contact with a physical Guru, to think Buddha is your Guru, or Dalai Lama is your Guru, or whoever is, whose ever writings one is reading is your Guru. I remember reading in India some years ago a text called, what was it called? Jesus is my Guru. It was some Christian kids who had gone to some Hindu ashram and had recognized this need for Guru devotion. They realized that Christ was their Guru. They read the Bible as though this was actually Christ's injunction to them, the New Testament. And they had very rich spiritual kind of experiences from that. So when you have these other factors and you meditate, rather than just allowing the mind to mull over unhappiness, depression, angry states, jealous states, if we find ourselves being condescending or cruel or spiteful or jealous or holding grudge, just being angry in general, rather than just allowing that, to try to apply the antidotes. The antidotes don't function, dependent on our karma, don't function necessarily immediately to eradicate that so that problem never arises again, because first of all, these are temporal antidotes. That is to say, like cutting off the weeds at ground level. Okay, so right? But the roots are still there. How can we eradicate the roots of these things? We have to, wisdom of emptiness, of selflessness, that realization when developed so we have a direct perception, ultimately that's the antidote that can uproot them. Until then, we cut them off at the roots, or we cut them off at ground level, so to speak. We apply these temporal antidotes, but then because of the force of the imprints in our mind, there will be other episodes in our life when anger or attachment arises. But because of then practicing this antidote in the past, we can apply the temporal antidote very quickly. And in general, we won't be so plagued by that for a long period of time. Doesn't mean that we've eradicated it from the mind. We eventually have to use that calmer and calmer state derived through applying the temporal antidotes to be able to practice Dharma, to learn more about emptiness, to develop the ultimate method of bodhicitta. I say ultimate method, meaning the supreme method of bodhicitta, to accumulate merit and purify negative karma most effectively, and thereby be able to realize emptiness so that we can eradicate them from the root. So it takes time. His Holiness, the Dalai Lama, has said, you shouldn't judge your progress over a short period of time. At least you should think of it in years. Think, am I much different than I was last year, or 2 years ago, or 5 years ago, if you've practiced Dharma that long? Rather than judging, well, I got angry yesterday, I got angry again today. As though you should have conquered it in one day or something like that. These are states of mind that we have habituated to since beginningless time. we're experts in anger and attachment and jealousy, low self-esteem, envy, so forth. So it would be foolish to think that in a short period of time we would eradicate them, or even to have the expectation that in a short period of time, by meditating, you're going to have a great transformation. Try to be satisfied. Dharma happiness arises small. And one part of Dharma happiness is the diminishing of our irritation. Like, say, for instance, you've got a bad itch that's irritating you, that's causing suffering. Even you put some salve on it, and it just starts, you just notice someone says, is it any better? You say, well, not much, but it's a little bit better, and maybe it's actually curing the underlying causes. That would be to a person who had a long-term view, that would be very reassuring. There'd be a certain contentment in that. So to be content with, as we're meditating, that we are making progress, not to expect instant gratification. It was our American tendency, right, to expect instant gratification. Does that help? Is it not addressing exactly what you're...
Even just seeing small improvements, one can hope for another human rebirth, a precious human rebirth. Sometimes I read this and I think, well, you can practice, you can do a meditation, you can come to some little understanding, move forward a little bit, and then something will happen, and it seems like a lot of that falls apart, that you are angry again. And then that seems to carry such, weight to me, that then that could send you into a place where you're really threatening your rebirth.
Right.
I guess that's what I'm saying is, it seems like the entropy to the negative is so strong in my mind that the possibility of a rebirth where you might even be able to think about enlightenment again seems huge.
Well, I think
what the lamas say, that Soquel Rinpoche used to say, great yogi, scholar, incredible being, guru. It says in the teachings, he said that even though, there are many negativities that we might be generating, and the negative energy is very strong, just as in the same way, even a small child, by throwing a stone, can scare away a huge flock of crows, by throwing one little stone. With the right wisdom and the right activity, you can eliminate incredible negative karma. So all of these things, if we notice that negative energy in us, we have to try to purify and accumulate in the most powerful way. And a skillful person, as Shantideva says in the Bodhisattva's Taravatara, who with intelligence would not try to generate bodhicitta, who, knowing how much merit it accumulates to be able to, to bring about the causes for future rebirths within cyclic existence in the higher realms, to purify negative karma, to throw us in the lower realms, it's like one of the most powerful things that you can do. Also guru devotion, to devote oneself to the spiritual guide. Those two, Lama Zopa Rinpoche often extols as when you think about the perfect human rebirth, how it can be valuable even in the shortest instant that we have right now, by those two methods, guru devotion and bodhicitta. And if you wanted to say bodhicitta, you could even think ultimate bodhicitta also, meditation on emptiness. In the shortest instant of time, you can accumulate merit and purify negativity by those two methods, bodhicitta and guru devotion, that in even a hearer and solitary realizer, if you're talking about conventional bodhicitta and guru devotion, might not be able to generate over eons, let alone ordinary beings. So we have to find the right stone to throw to get rid of the crows. Okay. So how was the meditation? Was that any thoughts? Any responses? Miriam, how was your meditation? That's okay. Mm. Karen, any? Yeah, sure.
Let's say that through Dharma we start being patient and more patient and trying to put a lot of effort in putting the antidotes. Can it be possible that we are not really being successful, but that what we are really doing is being in the process of accumulating all these problems we were having, rather than really applying Dharma? What we were doing was just putting them somewhere else to the point that they can become explosive.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, if we don't attend to the actual problem, we might think that we're practicing Dharma and we're ignoring something. So you have to be, that's why it takes a certain amount of wisdom. You have to actually look. It says in the various teachings, first attend to your main problem. First look at what your main problem is in terms of your life. Is it, and sometimes you need the guidance of a guru or spiritual friends, because we may not know, we may not recognize what's really bothering us. Excuse me. And all of the antidotes are found in the Lam Rim. All of these things that we're mentioning now are found in the stages of the path. So to use that as a constant, glance every day at the Lam Rim, it's like being familiar. This is what I want to develop. This is where I'm going, to the end state of enlightenment. Yeah, I think there's a very easy, when we don't have a chance to be guided, to have, to be around other spiritual friends all the time, there might be the tendency of thinking that we're practicing Dharma, but maybe ignoring the actual thing. So now what we're trying to do is, within our mind, to recognize these states. Take to mind, within the controlled laboratory of your meditative session. I use it kind of the laboratory of your mind. Here, it's with this purpose, it's okay to allow yourself to bring the state of anger or depression or whatever present there for some time, and watch what's happening. How is it occurring? What are the causes? Why are we depressed? Because we expected something to last forever. We expected someone to live forever. We had Western society, we talked about this before in our class, Western society believes it's important to grieve when we have loss. Right? Isn't that right? I mean, a lot of societies, they think in modern psychology also, they think it's unhealthy not to grieve when you have loss, whether a loved one or job or whatever. I think that's very much the case if you don't already have a accumulation of familiarity with impermanence. As Maureen was saying, or as I was responding in conversation with her, this is a resource of understanding that we have. Even we apply a temporal antidote now, and it eliminates the problem temporarily, or it reduces it. And then the problem arises later, and we think, oh, it was useless, what I did. No, it wasn't useless, because that antidote now is more easily accessible, the temporal antidote. You can apply it more easily. The continuity of depression or anger or whatever begins to decrease. Right? If we allow ourselves to remain in an unhappy state for a long period of time, we start to develop some inertia to stay there. So it's important to take time out and come and see spiritual friends, to do some meditation, so you don't stay in that state for a long period of time. So you start to see it in a different light. This is inevitable change. This is what the just what we were meditating on last, besides seeing it as the misfortune as being a manifestation of your karma, also this is something not only that will change, it came about because of change. We couldn't expect to be in contact with our friends and family, our loved ones, forever. Inevitably, from the moment we met them, the moment there was contact, or even as if from the moment we were approaching meeting them in contact, inevitably it was set up that we would have to separate. There's nothing that remains within cyclic existence, any compounded phenomena, friendships, family relationships. There's nothing that remains constant. So I would suggest seeing Lord of the Rings. It's good. Did you see that one? The latest? It was very nice. It's got some kind of nice little, if you think about it in the right way, some kind of Dharma wisdom in it, you know, that inevitably you have to change and friendships have to be left and loved ones and so forth. I particularly like one scene. Has everyone seen it yet? Yeah? So there's one scene, I won't spoil it for you, but just one scene I loved very much. The daughter of the elf king. She sneaks into war with them. She's supposed to stay back. Oh, no, she's not the daughter of the elf king. She's daughter of the king of one of the humans, I guess. And he was told her to stay back. She has to rule the kingdom if he dies. She goes into battle anyway, and she's got this helmet on, so they can't tell she's a woman. So at one point, she accosts this huge negative energy that had previously stabbed Frodo, one of these sort of like shadow creatures wearing terrible armor, sort of like Darth Vader, indestructible. Pardon? Ring rat, is that what he is? Ring rat? Yeah, the latest one, yeah. And at one point he's about to kill her in the battle, and he says, "No man can kill me." And she takes off her helmet, and her long hair comes down. She says, "I'm not a man, I'm a woman." stabs him through the helmet, and we all go, "Yes!" Yeah, okay, excuse me. It may be dated if someone watches this DVD 20 years from now, they'll say, Lord of the Rings. Okay. Yes?
Does Buddhism differentiate in any way between sort of physiological or organic depression as opposed to sociological?
Well, the same thing with illness. Some illnesses are mainly due, everything's going to be as a result of our karma, but some of the karma may just be to have the condition there, and by eliminating the condition or taking some other condition, some food supplement or medication or whatever, that can eliminate. Other kinds of illness, physical illness, might be the result of karma on a deeper level, that you have that particular imbalance in your body, and or in your mind, and until you purify that karma, it's going to remain there. Causes, they say, for instance, if you have the cause for untimely death ripening right now, whatever medication you take is not going to prevent that. In fact, it may be that you'll choke on the medication. The very thing that you think of as a cause of life becomes a cause of death because that particular karma is ripening. So in the same sense, in terms of depression, there may be some depressions that are due to outer conditions, and when that changes, say you've lost a friendship, you meet another friend, and that depression can overcome. There are other kinds of depression that may be due to imprints of harming others or such in past lives, and without seemingly any cause, without anyone saying, well, what's wrong in your life? You've got your family, you've got all of these things, but you're unhappy. Some unhappiness. Basically, depression is a form of unhappiness, right? It's the mental feeling, unhappiness, unpleasurable feeling of mind. Usually that arises because of inappropriately attending to something you perceive something and you become unhappy. But sometimes that can arise, unhappiness can arise as a result of making others unhappy in the past. Maybe making your gurus unhappy, making your spiritual friends unhappy, disappointing them or whatever. And so that can arise as a karmic result. Now, the only way that very unexpected, and I'm not sure that's what is the cause of all of the depression of, the depression of people that have that unexplained depression nowadays. What do they call it clinically? Yeah, no, there are different kinds when it arises without any apparent outer condition, often in later life. It may be that there are other things that people are not attending to, just the fact that they're getting older and so forth. But there is some kind of depression that can, pardon?
Might be repressed anger too.
Okay. Yeah. So, in terms of if you have that kind of unhappiness, recurrent unhappiness coming, one has to think about it, because that can become the cause of thinking in that way a long, long period of time, being depressed, thinking, I am depressed. I will remain this way forever. That is just my fate. It's impermanent. And to recognize it as a result of karma, and to use it for the benefit of others. Even that whatever, the example we've given many times, what do they say in America nowadays? There's this thing, if someone gives you a lemon, if life gives you a lemon, make lemonade, right? So if someone comes and dumps a big dump truck of excrement on your front lawn, and at one point you say, oh my, what would you say? Excrement! You would say something else, but anyway, fertilizer, yeah. You think fertilizer, even the garbage of your life, even the excrement of your life, the harm, you can use as fertilization for your Dharma realizations, if you're skillful. Even it's said the warriors in the past, they actually, the scars that they had, they actually cherished, and it became an emblem of their courage and something that they were proud of. Here, you don't want to be proud in a negative sense, but all of the negative things that have happened to you, even if life has thrown you a curveball or given you lots of lemons, you can use that in your Dharma for your Dharma realizations, to meditate. This is a result of karma. Wow! Other people don't realize this. If I want to be happy, I've got to create the cause to be happy. The opposite causes that I've created in the past. I've got to purify these, avoid, and I can use this situation to empathize with others who are experiencing the same kind of suffering. So to use it as, for your own benefit. Okay, let's finish this meditation. Let's again do the other two antidotes to anger. Again, sit comfortably. Watch your breathing. Bring your attention to the laboratory of your mind and let it become uncluttered by just looking at its clear light nature. At first, it's just an intuitive sense of openness of the mind. By focusing on that, you prevent the continuity of thoughts from continuing, their frequency being less, their intensity being less. Now again, think of something that has instigated the state of anger in your mind with perhaps some of its attendant secondary mental factors such as wrath and grudge and spite and envy and so forth, cruelty. Something that was unhappy, caused you to be unhappy. Maybe harsh words, someone left you, your baby left you. Someone told lies about you, harmed you, harming others, your friends, helping your enemies. See how that mind feels, disturbing the clarity of your mind, disturbing the ability of wisdom to function properly. Some pent-up energy that perhaps wants to strike out, wants to not bear the discomfort, because it seems to have become greater through exaggerating, inattentively, inappropriately attending. Now seeing, remembering karma, that this suffering is justified. It's a result of our past karma and something that we can actually feel some satisfaction in bearing with this suffering, tolerating it, because it's exhausting our negative karma. Even the loss of a loved one, where we feel very strong depression, this is exhausting our negative karma. Remembering impermanence, that this present suffering will change. It's the result sometimes of separation, the result of the inevitability of change. Some time from now, you will look back at this situation and wonder why it was such a big bother for you. Then to think of another misconception of the mind that increases the anger, inappropriately thinking that we don't need this situation. This has nothing for us. This is only a problem. Instead, think this situation, the loss, the harsh words, is our guru manifesting, reminding us of the nature of cyclic existence. Even our aging, reminding us of cyclic existence. We have to leave this life. Reminding us to practice patience, reminding us to practice compassion. Rather than having the inappropriate thought, I don't need this. Right now, I'm fed up, I don't need this. To be patient, to open up your mind, to bear with this by thinking, this is my teacher communicating, my guru. The Dharma is manifesting before my mind if I think in the right way. By experiencing this with equanimity, without disturbing the mind into anger, bearing with it, seeing it as exhausting my negative karma and so forth, I'll actually profit. This is my This is something I do need. This is what life within cyclic existence is actually about, practicing the Dharma. It's not simply being comfortable all the time, being right, being successful in a worldly sense, always being loved, never losing one's friendships or companions or loved ones. The fact that your mind is reacting in this way indicates that it's something that has to be attended to, has to be remedied. So this situation has awakened you to that fact. It's your guru. Infestation of ants in your kitchen, causing your mind to be unhappy, maybe even cruel. Step on them, wash them down the drain, get rid of them quickly. Thoughts like that. This is actually a manifestation of your guru showing that this tendency is there to disregard others. The secondary mental factor, the affliction associated with anger of cruelty or harmfulness. So in showing us this, we need to try to meditate on the antidote. When the guru has given some advice, it's not simply said, it's like giving us the medicine. If we don't take it, we just carry it in our pocket or a big sack of the medicine on our shoulder or in our knapsack. It won't help us. We have to take the medicine of the Dharma. What the guru has proposed now, showing us the problem, we have to apply the antidote. It may involve incredible opening of the mind, to be patient with others, to be tolerant, to really think, I must be tolerant. I must learn how to be tolerant, patient, not get angry. I must develop bodhicitta, to actually think of the welfare of others. And then a fourth temporal antidote to counteract perhaps the particular thought of cruelty, the particular thought of thinking others deserve to be harmed. There's nothing wrong with that. They need that. My harsh words, my discipline, my correcting their errors, pointing out their errors. The antidote to that, of course, that state of mind can easily contribute to anger, especially cruelty, spite. Maybe grudge. This could contribute in the sense that we think, well, I'll have to show them eventually. I have to harm them eventually. Put them in their place. The antidote to this is compassion, bodhicitta. just as we do not desire to be unhappy, to be criticized, to be minimalized, to be unloved, to be unhappy, we don't desire any of those. Likewise, others are exactly the same. They want to be loved. They want to be successful, happy. They don't want to be criticized, harmed, stolen from, cheated. Starting to look at other living beings with warmth is the first step, developing what we call heartwarming or affectionate love for them. Seeing them as endearing and suitable recipients of our compassion, our care, our love, because they've been our mothers in past lives, they've been our friends numberless times, depthlessly kind to us, recalling that again and again. How even for a person with sharp intellect, sharp faculties, can understand that they're exactly equal to us now in wanting these. There's no difference between myself and others. There's no inherently existent self. So I can start to identify with the welfare of all beings. They have the mind of non-harmfulness, the virtuous mental factor that obviously acts as a direct antidote of harmfulness, cruelty, also antidote to anger in general, one aspect of it. To help to overcome the thought to retaliate out of belligerence or wrath, belligerence, very harmful, malicious mind, because other living beings don't deserve to be unhappy. Now again, look at this anger-provoking thought in your mind. And again review the antidotes. Karma, impermanence, guru, compassion. See if that causes the angry mind to decrease, the turmoil in the mind, the agitated mind, which is a hallmark of the afflictions disturbing the mind. If that begins to calm, and actually attending to the object, the referent object that before was inappropriately attended to, but now attending to it appropriately, understanding the nature of the object, if that anger begins to disappear temporarily. Then relax your mind, bring your attention back, present. Fine. Any observations or questions? How do you say questions in Spanish? Preguntas. Interesting. Preguntas. Any preguntas? Okay.
So that this might be not related to the class, but it's about the Tibetan calendar. No.
Okay, one quick unrelated question.
It's quick just- unrelated pregunta. Okay, it's just about next week. There are 2 days in the Tibetan calendar that says the day of bad omens.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to know what that means.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's what we're supposed to do.
Well, was it that those days? There's 1 or 2 days where the 9 inauspicious things come together. So, if you had the choice, and you were going to try to begin some endeavor, those would not be the best days to start. But let me ask you this. Do you think you can skip over those days? Maybe if we stay in bed all day, that don't do anything those days. So it's not as though you shouldn't try to do virtuous actions those days. In fact, my feeling is that just like full moon and new moon, when we take precepts, to overcome the negative, the natural tendency on those days is for the mind to be more loony, isn't it? Do you know that expression? Maybe. How do you say do you say in Spanish something like that? Lunatico? Lunatic. Yeah. The tendency is to be more crazy on those days, and also the animal world tends to be more fearful when there's no light, or when when it's full but just beginning to sense that it could change from that fear. Also the attachment can arise very strongly, lust and so forth. So to take precepts on those days is said to be very powerful, because it's you have to apply more effort on those days, so you accumulate more virtue. So I think even on the days of the inauspicious signs, it's not as though you shouldn't practice virtue on those days. It's if you were going to start a new teaching, that wouldn't be the best day to pick for auspiciousness, for the longevity of your teaching. But if you're teaching already, to continue teaching that day is okay. But in the case of Rinpa Rinpoche, he had to skip this weekend, and if he were to then start again on next weekend, auspicious, it wouldn't be so good. So to skip that weekend also. It's not as though you should never teach on those days. Or if you're doing retreat and in the middle there's an inauspicious day, you say, well, today I'm not going to meditate because it's inauspicious. That's not right. I don't think that's the right way to think. That's my understanding. Okay, so now let's take a look at the mental factors, secondary mental factors associated with attachment in Geshe-la's text here. First one that he puts down associated with attachment is avarice. What's another word we use for that? Miserliness, right? How did Siggy translate number 6, miserliness. A miser, I think you've heard my story of, is it Uncle Scrooge in the Donald Duck comic books? The Great Miser. It shows the extent of my great literary endeavors. There's probably some great, is it actually Scrooge in Dickens is actually very miserly? That's kind of, okay, so, but instead of using Dickens, I always use Donald Duck, so you could see the extent of my great learning and erudition. Miserliness is something that arises from attachment. Miserliness is a state of mind that doesn't want to part with what one already has, right? Doesn't want to share it with others. Actually, there can be a miserliness of physical things, material things, your wealth, and so forth. But there can also be miserliness of dharma and knowledge. You have certain qualities, let's say, and you don't want, even intellectual qualities, and you don't want to share them with others, or power, let's say, you don't want to share them with others. That can arise from pride also, isn't it? Pride can be involved in that. So if you know from sometimes in some of the esoteric teachings, it says the navel chakra can be blocked because of miserliness and pride. That one. Yeah. You found it. That was good. That was good. That's the right one. Yeah, it's not this. That's called the heart chakra. That's the navel chakra, right? So sometimes you think, what's the relationship between pride and miserliness? Actually, out of pride, out of an inflated sense of oneself, one is hesitant then to share one's knowledge and so forth, one's qualities that one senses as being a source of one's highness. So it's related with miserliness like that, and that tends to block the navel chakra. So here it says avarice or miserliness is a mental factor that out of attachment to respect and material gain firmly holds on to one's possessions with no wish to give them away. In fact, I think I've mentioned this before. The most generous people that I've found around the world are usually the poor. Wherever I go, there's people you go, you visit, and they'll give you literally the shirt off their back, their last meal, you know. When I was in Russia teaching, and I stayed at some apartments, very, very, very poor people, and they gave me this, what they considered a sumptuous breakfast. It was black tea. I think they were able to find a little bit of sugar because it was rationed at the time, and these little teeny robin eggs that they had bought. It sounds inappropriate, but anyway. And some bread, and I'm not sure. I think they didn't have butter. It was impossible to get, but there was some jam. And I mean, they'd gone all out to give me this breakfast. For them, that was like incredible. Whereas if I visited very, very wealthy people, for them to give you a glass of water sometimes is a big deal, you know. Oftentimes, I think the wealthy, our mind that thinks of becoming wealthy, can fall into avarice because we think one of the causes of being wealthy is keeping and not sharing, isn't it? Not dispersing, just keeping. Does that make sense? So, further it says, this mental factor causes us pain whenever the possibility arises of being separated from what we own and what we regard dear to us. It can be our reputation and so forth. In addition to occurring with regard to material objects, it can also develop with regard to our own inner understandings of Dharma. It is thus the greatest obstacle to giving away our possessions to and sharing our understanding with others. So sometimes there's a tendency of not teaching or sharing knowledge out of that miserliness, which is related also with attachment and pride and so forth. In the future, it is a cause for both material and spiritual poverty. And then here it mentions there's two kinds of miserliness. The intention never to give something away, and the intention not to give away something for the time being. Do you have any of the miserliness things? I'll never give that away. Maybe you can be miserly with your companions, isn't it? You know, I want their attention. I'll never allow. It can be related with jealousy also. Okay, so that's one that's in association with attachment. Does that make sense that miserliness is related and derived from attachment? You're attached to something, so you find it. The more attachment you have, the more difficulty you have in letting go of it and sharing it with others. What would be the antidote to miserliness? The mind of generosity. So when we say generosity, it doesn't mean just the physical action. It means the mind of generosity, which is what? What thought is that? When we study the 6 paramitas, it comes actually. What is the actual the thought to give? You know. So it says in the Buddhist scriptures, the mind that thinks, if I give this, what will I eat? Is the mind of pretas. The mind that thinks, if I eat this, what will I give? Is the mind of gods. You know, devas, you know, sublime. Or you say consume. If I consume this, if I give this, what will I have to use? Consume, you know. That's the mind of pretas, a preta mind. You know what a preta is, hungry ghost. The mind that thinks, if I consume this, what will I have to give? That's a divine mind. So to think of the benefits of generosity can help to overcome miserliness, to recognize the impermanence of the objects that you're attached to. You'd have to separate from them anyway. Isn't it the case, has it ever been the case with you, that you, perhaps out of miserliness, maybe not wanting to share it with others, but wanting to keep it for yourself, you've kept something till it's spoiled? Does that ring a bell with anyone? Maybe that's just me. Yeah. Okay. No, it's definitely me also. But, you know, like some material thing, and then you keep it, and in your closet you don't even use it, even though others could use it. It rusts, and it becomes outmoded in 5 years. In those 5 years, it could have been used by others, but out of miserliness, you kept it. To think of the benefits, you know, first of all, impermanence, the benefits of charity, of giving, how you create the cause for future resources. The cause for resources now is not just to keep the resources you have, it's to disperse them. You have to give in order to give. You have to love in order to be loved, isn't it? Did Christ say something like that? Give and ye shall receive. Is that Christ, or is it just the Old Testament? Pardon? Beale? Oh, Beatles. I thought this was another thing from Lord of the Rings. You were saying another one of these ringworm or whatever. Okay. So miserliness is also this is what is a very, very big obstacle to our spiritual practice, and why in the 7-limb puja we make one of the objects, one of the 7 limbs is generosity, to actually make offering in many different ways, both physical and, you know, actual manifested offerings, things that you actually make, and those that you imagine. Oh. She's turning so you can't see that. She's getting like a pillar. She's
but what if it's not you who you know, maybe you're keeping something, or because you have something in mind or whatever, you're not willing to give it away at that time.
Okay, that's one of the kinds of mindfulness, right?
But somebody else comes along and thinks, oh, well, you have all these resources. I'm going to take your stuff and give it to other people. Now, what category is that?
For the other person or for you?
For the other person.
Well, that's kind of like rape and pillage, isn't it? I don't know. Yeah, it's kind of Robin Hood, maybe, yeah. Why, were you thinking of doing that to someone else, or you're afraid someone will do that to you?
No, they've already done it. I quite knew exactly what to...
Well, obviously the thing to do there, because the mind can become unhappy, is to think of karma. There's no way they could have appropriated, quote, misappropriated my things, or inappropriately taken them, unless I did the same to others in the past. Good. No, you did. Okay. I hope they didn't get angry about it, and then think I'm going to get it back. I'll get it back from them. I'm going to send out a party and steal it back from them. Okay, now the next one is, and Geshe Rapton's book is associated with attachment, is self-satisfaction. Now what would that be? What's the translation in the other text? Haughtiness, right? So what is that connected with? That's obviously similar to pride, right? Because pride is an inflated state of mind. Self-satisfaction is a mental factor that being attentive to the marks of good fortune one possesses brings the mind under its influence and produces a false sense of confidence, or you could say pride. It has the function of giving rise to and being in accordance with all other afflictions, as well as interfering with the attainment of any higher qualities. Self-satisfaction produces a false sense of haughtiness through considering the superiority of one's own race, physical appearance, learning, youth, or authority, your position over others. However, it is not necessarily unwholesome to be aware of the good qualities one may have. This is talking about to be aware of them, but self-satisfaction is when the mind becomes inflated about that. It shouldn't mean that you shouldn't pay attention and know that you have good qualities. What must be avoided is to overvalue them and conceitedly boast about them. This mental factor is very liable to give rise to self-importance. So this seems to be out of attachment. This is related with attachment, leaning on that side, and its side is a precursor of actual full-blown pride. Okay? And the third one, yeah.
It's good to rejoice in your own qualities.
Mm-hmm.
So you've got some, that's what I was thinking, it's kind of tricky not to get attached or something, The difference between rejoicing, because also that's one practice, to rejoice in your good qualities. But this is more like, because it does say a joy, but there's an attachment with the joy there or something.
Does it say joy here?
It says a joy in mental happiness upon seeing one's own good health. But this is in
Yeah.
the text. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So something to think about. We're gonna have a break in a while to think about this over lunch. The third one, connected with attachment, is excitement. And you remember what excitement is. Excitement doesn't just mean being excited. The kids are excited. Christmas, Santa Claus is coming. That's not what's meant by excitement, right? Excitement is the particular kind of scattering mind or wandering mind that is wandering onto an object of attachment, something that one finds attractive within one's meditation. Excitement is a mental factor that through the force of attachment does not allow the mind to rest solely upon a wholesome object, but scatters it here and there to many other objects. It has the principal function of obstructing mental quiescence, calm abiding, shamatha. Also, it causes the mind to engage in uncontrolled fantasy and frivolity. Okay. Daydreaming, fantasy, fantasizing. So let's just do a very quick, short dedication, and we'll take a break for lunch, and we'll start afterwards for the second part of our practice day, and we'll meditate on. We'll do some more of these and meditate on their antidotes. So think, I've created roots of virtue this morning through positive motivation, through perhaps temporal motivation at moments during the discourse, if you were moved, if you had one of those aha moments and resolves to change one's behavior in some way. But the general tenor of our session, molded by our initial motivation, we've created virtuous karma. Let's dedicate this and the karma that we've created during this course, that it not be ripen in just some intellectual knowledge in the future, some pleasure within cyclic existence that can be experienced once and then lost, like the ripening of a plant or flower that just ripens once and then dies, but that we may perennially receive the benefits of this until we achieve enlightenment. Dedicate this to enlightenment in that way. May this ripen in such a way, this karma, in my own attainment of enlightenment, full awakening, however long that might take. Developing two bodhicittas, compassionately and effortlessly working with skill and wisdom, manifesting for the sake of all living beings, eliminating their suffering, bringing them happiness due to this merit. And try to seal within the emptiness of the three spheres as you understand.